There's a lot happening right now, and it all centers on Donald Trump. The accusations of abuse of power are piling up, and they're not just political talking points anymore. Critics say they're putting Americans in real danger. And here's where it gets even more intense. A U.S. Army general has just described Trump in two words that you have to hear to believe. Words that, in military language, are the equivalent of DEFCON 1. That's how serious this is. But before we get to that, let's look at two breaking stories that set the stage. In Portland, shocking visuals show federal forces moving in as Trump escalates his fight with the city. And in Illinois, Governor J.B. Pritzker has raised his own alarm, saying he's now on Trump's enemies list. After we unpack those, I'll share the general's blunt assessment of the president.
Note, the President of the United States is not sending troops into Republican cities or into Republican states. He's talked about it, but that's not what he's doing. He is focused on Democrats, and now he's made an enemies list. He's made a list of people that are his political opponents, and he's calling us domestic enemies. I mean, what kind of a country are we in here? The United States used to be a country where the president followed the Constitution, where the president believed in the rule of law, where the president didn't target people based on their views, but rather had debate with people and maybe won, maybe lost in an election and put their views forward and got them passed. But the idea that you're going to go suggest that you're going to arrest people or that people don't deserve to be U.S. citizens when they are, just because they oppose the president of the United States. I mean, there is something genuinely wrong with this man. And the 25th Amendment ought to be invoked.
The 25th Amendment is often called the nuclear button of American politics. Ratified in 1967, it was designed for moments of crisis, when a president is no longer able to carry out the duties of the office. It has been used only in limited temporary cases, like when a president undergoes surgery, but never to permanently remove a sitting commander-in-chief. The fact that this conversation is even happening now shows just how extraordinary the moment has become. And into this tense backdrop comes retired Army Major General Randy Manner, a man trained to measure every word. He has just described Donald Trump with two words that are unprecedented in modern times. In military terms, it's the equivalent of sounding the DEFCON 1 alarm, a warning that the nation may be edging dangerously close to the constitutional safeguard no one ever thought would be tested.
Not only are these armed service members on the streets of American cities, if you look as the tank rolls by, the sniper has his gun out on the protesters who are Americans. They're holding protests. General, help me understand. Help the people watching this understand why we cannot allow this to become normal.
You're absolutely correct. We should never, ever normalize the idea of American soldiers on U.S. soil. It's absolutely un-American. It reminds me, quite frankly, President Roosevelt in his inauguration said that we should be focused on the four freedoms: the freedom of speech and expression, the freedom of worship, the freedom from fear, and the freedom from want. None of those things are happening right now because people are fearful. People are not allowed to do what they want within the law. And this is not the American way.
Rules of engagement are very important. The rules of engagement typically, and you correct me if I'm wrong, everyone gets a card where they're carrying around what the rules of engagement are for whatever particular mission that they're on. Talk about the importance of that and how concerned you are, if you are, about the Secretary of Defense saying we don't fight with stupid rules of engagement.
So those words by the Secretary of Defense, as well as the President, those are the words of potential war criminals. We, the American military, and the American people, we treat people with dignity and respect. It's something where the rules of engagement are intended to safeguard people on the battlefield. What I mean by that is, does that mean you're supposed to fire up a family as they are trying to collect food or on the way to the market? Or how do you know that someone is a combatant? It's something where there are definitions about what is right and what is unacceptable in a combat zone. They are for the safety of the local people. And remember, for us to be able to be, quite frankly, friends with the local people, even though we are perhaps pursuing vigorously the enemy of the United States. Not everyone out there is the enemy. I'm going to tell you that the enemy within is not the American people, and it is not within the American military. So I leave it to your listeners to decide, where is the enemy within?
Trump has lit a fuse on America's streets. What we're witnessing isn't just political theater anymore. It's violence spilling into neighborhoods, protests turning into battlegrounds, and a nation being pushed to the brink. A retired Army Major General has now gone so far as to call him a potential war criminal. And in Illinois, Governor J.B. Pritzker has openly raised the alarm, saying it may be time to invoke the 25th Amendment, the constitutional nuclear option designed to remove a president unfit for office. Mark this moment down because we are at DEFCON 1.1. And yes, I added the .1 because as bad as this feels, we all know there's still room for it to get worse. And it will get worse before it gets better. Why? Because this isn't just a president. It's a celebrity turned commander-in-chief who thrives on chaos, who keeps an enemies list, and who has the military at his disposal. Add to that millions of loyal supporters and hundreds of lawmakers in Washington who still cheer him on, and you have the makings of a constitutional crisis. I don't sound alarms lightly, but tonight it feels like we are staring down the barrel of democratic collapse. The guardrails are shaking, the institutions are bending, and the question is whether they'll break. The only hope is that behind closed doors, in the highest levels of government, serious conversations are happening. Conversations about accountability, about criminality, and yes, about the 25th Amendment. Because if they're not, then the slide we're on may soon become a freefall. This story is moving fast, and tomorrow's headlines could look very different from today's. I'll be here to break it down for you, cut through the noise, and give you the context you won't find anywhere else. So make sure you're subscribed, turn on notifications, and join the conversation in the comments below. I want to hear what you think.